Hey, 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 happy Tuesday and welcome to Taco Tuesday. We are switching things up this week. Thought I'd give you all a little break from the PowerPoints, and we have a very special guest today. Topher Gardner has agreed to join us. I'm so happy to have him here. I'm going to introduce him here in 1 second, but as many of you know from the ads and things that have been out on social media, we are going to be talking today about near-death experiences. But Topher actually has another insight into this that I think makes his expertise on this even more nuanced and more important for believers and non-believers alike to understand. As I have spoken in the past, there is a difference between the high places of Ephesians 6:12 and the third heaven in Corinthians. They're even the Greek words are even different. We have the epuranios in Ephesians 6:12 and the oranos in the Corinthians passage. I don't know the reference offhand. I think it's Second Corinthians 12:2 is popping into my head. Do not quote me on that. But anyway, we have to understand that biblically, the throne room of the third heaven and the throne room of the high places of Ephesians 6:12 are very different places. And if we cannot differentiate those two places when we visit them or are dragged there, that is going to have a profound effect on our theology and likely a profound effect on our soul. And so Topher is going to be here to help us navigate through these things. Now, I'm hoping since I have a guest that I can be a little bit more active in the chat. However, as per usual, if you have a question or a comment or a question for Topher or something that you want brought up, put your question or comment in all caps, and at the end of the show, we will get to it. We'll put it up on the screen, and we'll have a little bit of time to do that. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Topher Gardner to Taco Tuesday. Topher, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Vicki. It's so nice to be here with you.
I am so glad. I've been excited about this for weeks, So for those of you who saw the episode that I recently did with my friends over at Nephilim Death Squad, you'll recognize Topher. Was there along with Matt. And Topher, as you were getting into your story, I was immediately like, I have got to get him on Taco Tuesday because a few weeks ago, someone had actually asked a question about near-death experiences during the live chat because we had done a whole entire show on reincarnation and the differences between that and pre-existence of the soul, as well as divine reappearances, which is more of the ancient Semitic understanding of prophets, righteous men who died unjustly, who would come back in these divine reappearances. And so someone brought up NDEs and I thought, that would be a good show. And then lo and behold, within days, I meet you and I'm like, this is perfect. Providential timing. So Topher, before we get started, just for people that are only going to watch for 5 minutes and click out, if this topic is of interest to you, near-death experiences, and you specifically want a biblical world view in which to frame that, a wonderful book read, Shaun Tabatt, The Near-Death Experience Conspiracy. It's on Amazon. You can get it through Destiny Image Publishing. He has done years and years of research, hundreds of case studies. And if you're interested in it from a biblical perspective, the NDE Conspiracy would be a great place to start. Okay, so with all of that said, Topher, I want you to just start out by letting everybody know who you are, just basic background, little testimony in a nutshell, wherever you want to go.
Wonderful. I am a father and a husband that's also a proprietor of a biochar company in the middle of Texas County, Missouri. I was born and raised in South Florida. I'm a South Florida baby, my wife and I are. But after living in Costa Rica for over 15 years, I ended up finding my way to the natural state, Arkansas, just below where you were, Vicki, and then bringing my biochar know-how and my dome building know-how up here to essentially South Central Missouri. because where we live in the Ozarks is pretty much the heartland of a lot of lumber industry. And so I've just taken, because I wanted to scale my business, I moved to the area of the world where there was a lot of wood cutoffs, and I convert those wood cutoffs into soil. So my company essentially regenerates
Oh,
soil, and that's what
wow.
I'm. That's what one of my companies. So I have Blackwell Biochar that does that, and then in the summertime I also have a dome building company called Coral Domes.
Oh,
So those are my two big loves in life, other than my family, are those two businesses. So that's what I'm up to right now.
that's great. Well, this is kind of all news to me, Topher, because the only time we've had to chat thus far has been live during a podcast. So you had sent me a video, like a short or a reel of one of your recent interviews that I saw on Instagram, I believe. And you were talking to a guy, the guy who had drawn the flowers, and
Yes.
that really piqued my interest. And so I've put up the banner a couple times. I'll put it up one more time. Guys, this is Topher's Instagram channel. And Topher, I'm going to give you a chance at the end too, but are there other places where people can follow you?
Yeah, I always forget to tell people I'm a podcaster also. Ever since living in the rainforest of Costa Rica, I've been podcasting just because I didn't have that many people around me, and it was a great way to be social with people all over the place.
Mm.
So I do actually have the Biocharisma podcast. That's how I know the Nephilim Death Squad and Owen Benjamin, all these different people. We're going to talk later about the Elementals Gathering Festival, which is going to be
Yes.
in your backyard. But so for some reason, I always forget to tell people about that. But I do actually have that running also. I get to interview wonderful people like yourself
Mm.
and just really get to further my knowledge with all these different things. That particular, I guess you would call short or clip that you were referencing was from my good friend Kevin O'Neill, and we were talking about this system to kind of protect us from the 5G and the cloud seeding and all these different things that the you could call it the powers and the principalities are trying to enforce without our consent.
Mm.
I should say they're not doing it without our consent. They're actually gaining our consent,
Yeah.
but there's a system by which we can actually essentially make our land like a monastery and have our one jurisdiction with the creator. And that's really been my point of focus. That's part of the reason why I have my biochar company.
Oh,
they
wow.
they all kind of go together. So it's also that we
Ah.
can establish our jurisdiction with the creator in total. And when we do that, then we're under the shield and the protection and armament of God.
Topher, I love this. We're going to have to talk more offline because I don't want to go wildly off topic, but I must connect you with my friend Randy Conway of the C2K report here on YouTube. And I'm not real great at explaining it because there are a lot of groups out there, various patriot movements who are doing all these things to get out from underneath taxes. And you see the YouTube videos where they're just bickering with policemen and trying to showcase their knowledge of the Constitution. What Randy does is actually it's an attempt through naturalization to become an ecclesia, to build a body of believers who, like you said, are no longer under the consent of
Mm-hmm.
this false entity that they have turned us all into when
Right.
we file our birth certificates with the Department of Treasury of all bizarre things. So anyway, got to connect you with Randy. In fact, that would be a great show at some point to have you and Randy on talking about that stuff, because it's a highly misunderstood thing. And a lot of Christians, they don't understand the rights that they have as children of God. And
Right.
there's a lot of confusion and disinformation out there. If you don't know what you're doing, you can get in a lot of trouble with the law. So oh man, yeah, that's another topic I'm very passionate about. So we'll table that for now. Topher, let's get right into it.
Okay.
When we were on Nephilim Death Squad a couple weeks ago, you began to talk about a near-death experience that you had when you were 4 years old. And could you share
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, I was a sickly little guy. I had a lot of gut problems. Now it's termed gut dysbiosis. I had it in a very extreme way. They were telling my parents I had everything under the sun. And,
Yeah.
and my mother, and they kept changing their tune. And my mother, she was an RN, so she really believed, the allopathic way of doing things. So I guess I was like a pincushion for all the different things that they were administering. My body
Mm.
didn't take to it all that well. When I was in the ICU, my vitals dropped like every day because apparently when you get really bad gut dysbiosis, you become actually allergic to everything that you're eating.
Oh, sure.
And that's what happened. So I ended up choking out. I ended up, swallowing too much spit, too much mucus. And I flatlined for, they said, around 5 minutes.
Mm.
And so for me, when I was on the other side, I experienced an intense relief because it's one of those things you don't know how much pain you're in or how much you're suffering until you're not.
Mm.
And so when I was in this other realm, I was in complete, like, I call it like liquid love. I mean, it was this level of home and not like joy, like happy joy, but like the deepest contentment you could ever imagine. But the crazy
Wow.
thing there was no pain. And
Mm.
I don't think people understand that just having a body is painful.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Buddhists talk about the pleasure pain principle. We're always, running from one to the other.
Yes.
But there is a little bit of truth in this notion. Like, you don't know how much pain you're actually in until you're not in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and as a little being, my soul was in this space of no pain. And so I was just so content and calm and at peace and at home. And
Mm.
I felt like I was completely saturated with, this is going to sound weird, but like, it's not enough to say I wasn't alone. It was like the
Mm.
the presence that I was within fully saturated me to knowing that I was utterly not alone. Like, I was utterly
Mm.
in the presence of, at my 4-year-old self, I didn't have the notion of God per se. I liked hearing about God because as a little boy, I loved
Mhm.
hearing about things with scale. But in the experience of that realm, it was just like complete and utter immersion in love and
Mm.
painlessness. And when I was in that space, um, I was told by this being that was it was behind me. I couldn't see the being, but the being I could feel was back and to the right. And she's like, It's not your time."
Mm.
And then I didn't care. I was just
Mhm.
like, I was just enjoying being in that space. And then what I could see on the horizon, by the horizon, it wasn't like it was far away, because I was my little being self. It wasn't like I was an old soul. It wasn't like I was
Mm.
this consciousness of like whatever.
Yeah.
That's why I've always had questions about reincarnation, because when I was on the other side of the veil, I was exactly me, like as I was on Earth. And so,
Interesting.
yeah,
Mm.
and my
Okay.
and my wife has a theory on that. Um, she thinks it's my first go. That's why you're close to God because this is your first go. You haven't been whatever
Uh,
you call it,
recycled.
polluted. You haven't been, you know brought down 2 pegs yet. So I was totally just in love. Like, I was literally in love, not like romantic love. And I could
Right.
see they look like, to my little mind, like these angelic beings. They look like a choir.
Mm.
and the background hues were all that of like a South Florida sunset, like in the Keys, beautiful peaches and coral, some purples, that type of color. But it was almost like the color was like I was like immersed in it, like I was a sea sponge. I couldn't see my own being. I could just feel me,
Mm.
and I could see and I could hear. And then the being that was behind me, now she said my name. She's like, Christopher, it's not your time yet. And this time I said, I'm not leaving. I was like, no, I literally said no. Like I got a little bit petulant. Like my vibration started to like actually, drop a little bit because I was getting agitated that I was being bothered. And then this being said it one more time, they work in threes. She's like,
Mm.
Christopher, it's not your time yet. And then she let me hear my mom crying. And the
Mm.
second I could hear my mom crying, I literally like dropped through a chute. And like I dropped it back into the ICU. And then I was in my body. And then who knows how long that was before I opened my eyes, because by the time I could open my eyes, my first memory was seeing my mother and father on my right hand side, seeing the doctor on the left hand side. I could hear the beeps of the heart monitoring thing. And then I saw this other being with the doctor, and I had no my 4-year-old self didn't care who the other being was or even who the doctor was.
Mm.
And so that was my experience of being on the other side. And then, yeah, I had like a mono fruit diet for a year to bring all my vitals back. I think all I could eat was apricots, and
Oh, wow.
and then slowly but surely I came back into strength and grew out of it.
So, a couple of things, Topher, and I think I might have asked you this when we were on Nephilim Death Squad as well, but for the benefit of those who haven't seen that, do you believe that had this near-death experience not occurred, that you would have died from your maladies as a 4-year-old?
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of weirdly aware of how close I've been to death a lot.
Mm. Mm,
I,
mm-hmm.
I've gotten hit by 2 cars, like literally, like my body's gotten hit by. I got hit when I was 15 by somebody that was speeding through a red light, and it had just rained in South Florida, so the roads were slick, and he sped through the light and he hit me, clipped me going, the police said it had to have been over 50 miles per hour, seeing how long the skid marks were. I walked away from that. When I was 20 years old, I got hit by a drunk driver. I was leaving a restaurant, and they were speeding out. They were a drunk driver, and they sped out of the parking lot and hit me.
Good grief.
I didn't necessarily walk away from that. I had broken ribs, and
Yeah, yeah.
that that was a whole fiasco for our bowl game. But yeah, there's like a lot of times, and I've said this before in other podcasts, but I'm weirdly aware of how many times death was right there, but the angels kind of like took care of me.
Mm, yeah,
I call it angels because I don't know what it is, but
sure.
it's just like, I mean, one of the most profound things was a friend of mine did this incredible prayer over us because we had a pretty interesting visit from some 3-letter agencies. And so we were leaving, and he did a prayer to protect us on our trip. And then, like, once again, I was pulling through an intersection. The light had been green long enough where the car in front of me had already pulled out through the intersection. So I was the second car, and even at that, this woman was running right through 3 lanes of traffic on Military Trail in South Florida. And I was like, I just got ready for the car to be T-boned. I was just
Yeah,
like, okay, this, because I could see it. I just turned to my left, and there she was, and everybody was like, oh, and she didn't hit us. Like we had no idea how she didn't hit us. Like
yeah.
it made no sense, and all I could think of was the prayer that was said, the protection prayer,
Mm,
really did its work.
yeah, no
uh, uh,
kidding.
and
You,
so yeah,
you know
so
what's interesting, Topher? I want to point this out here. of the hundreds of people I've talked to, going all the way back to before my book even came out, and I was doing research and I was interviewing a lot of people that had had lifelong sleep paralysis, not just once or twice, but like started at 3, 4 years old and had gone on for decades. After I had interviewed like maybe 5 people, 3 of the 5 had mentioned, and I'd never seen this sort of as an adjunct to sleep paralysis. 3 of the 5 people mentioned that from the time they were born until now, they had a sort of disproportionate number of times where they almost died. So it wasn't a near-death experience, but it was like a some sort of an accident or whatever. And it was like bizarre stuff, Topher. It wasn't like, all of us have gotten in some fender benders, and hit a stop sign or whatever. This was like bizarre stuff. So after people started saying that, then I started asking people who would say, I've had sleep paralysis my whole life. I'd say, have you had a whole bunch of times in your life where you almost died? Yes. Oh my gosh, you're right. You're right. So then I'm starting to think, well, other than my surgeries, because some of them were really critical, that hasn't happened to me. And so I started, things started coming back. Like this sort of started triggering some memories. So I started a list in my phone notes, like maybe 3, 4 years ago. And it's up to like 18 things now. And I didn't even count surgeries or car accidents on there because everybody has surgeries and car accidents, right? And none of my car accidents were serious, but I'm talking like the most bizarre like things. And so I can't quite explain it. I don't know that I have like a final answer on it, but for some reason, these people who are singled out or targeted, if you will, that have spiritual giftings, or they have had some sort of a sleep paralysis or a night terrors or NDE type out of body experiences, astral abduction experiences over the course of their whole life. The flip side of all the spiritual stuff happening to them is there tends to be this sinister backside to these targeted individuals where once you really get talking to them, it's like they got targets on their back. I don't know if you have ever thought of that or have any sort of explanation.
Yeah, I have a very interesting way of looking at it. One of my clients in Panama, it was General Albert Stubblebine. He's the one that they made Men Who Stare at Goats, that movie about. He's the
Oh.
one that developed the original Army remote viewing project. And I was his attaché for a little while, finding property for him and trying to find a cafe tall, like that's a small little coffee farm. He and his wife were trying to start a coffee business, and he was very instrumental in like kind of breaking me out of the naivety of the remote viewing thing. Because at the time, I
Yeah.
had because of, I guess piercing the veil, I had some like extracurricular activity. And other my best friend, the gentleman that you highlighted earlier in on the BioCharisma Instagram page, he was somebody that he and I bonded instantly when we first met because we both shared our near death experience encounter, and we always had this link, from that. So anyway, General Bert Stubblebine was emphatic that out of the 10,000 GIs that they tested to see who could remote view, there was only 2 things that correlated to being able to remote view. And that was, one, the person had a near-death experience, and 2, they saw light, uncommon light in the sky, is the way he put it. So he didn't say
Huh.
he didn't say UFOs, he didn't say anything like that. He was literally like, these people, and there were only 6 out of 10,000 GIs that could do this because they had those 2 attributes. They could see lights in the sky that nobody else saw, and they had near-death experiences. Well, I fit the boat with both of those. So needless to say, he and I had these great conversations when we were driving around Panama trying to find property. And I was telling him all these like supernatural experiences that I had had, and we would cry together and laugh. Like, he was all heart. I knew him when he was in his mid 80s, right? So he was kind of going through a retrospective at the time.
Mhm.
And I love the man. Like, he was a very beautiful person to me at least. Like, I have no idea what he was like in his military career.
Mm-hmm.
But so it was very interesting. Pretty much all of us that I'm aware of that have pierced the veil, have gone to the other side, that channel is always kind of open. And I say channel specifically because when you know you're not your body, it kind of puts you in a totally different category of it's like I from the spiritual side of things, you kind of have like a tag on you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like, and by the way, my best friend and I, we both have had those, like, we both have had those beings coming after us. Like, I for 27 years have been doing deep tissue myofascial release body work on people. And I've literally have gone through things that would seem like an exorcism. I don't know what technically makes an exorcism happen, but because I see light differently and I have had these, like, this other level of experience, those beings really like to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Those beings that normally don't get attention from human, when they do get attention from human, the one they really like it. Like, most of them want to embody. Most of those things want to embody. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm sure there's a whole other range of beings out there that are doing the bidding of their dark master, that want the us to be snuffed out, because there's not a single one of us that I know that have been that have gone to the other side where there has not been spiritual hits,
Yes.
is the best way I could say it.
Yes.
Like, I literally, like, I know when my boy Kevin has been attacked. He knows when
Mm-hmm.
I've been attacked. Like, and it's all because we can kind of see. Well, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I think for me, it's because I can see certain things at certain times that makes what's occurring evident to me. And so the one thing I've been really adamant about talking about on my podcast is that we live in a supernatural world that is
Yeah.
pretending to be natural.
Yes.
we
Yeah.
li- we live in a spiritual existence that's pretending to be physical. Like, it's just pretending.
Yeah.
Like like this whole thing is very, very, very vast and
Mm.
massive.
Yeah.
And because we are who God ordained us to be, there is like a massive amount of these extracurricular energies that really want to siphon off us, want to do whatever they can to quell the message that
Mm-hmm.
you're ultimately loved by your Father in heaven. Like, it does not want that message out. Like, it tries
Yeah.
with everything it can to, like, to stop that message.
Yeah. So, Topher, I want to kind of ride on the coattails of some of the things that you just said. Like when you said that they're kind of tagged, and the spiritual hits. So in Christianity, we have all these buzzwords and these phrases. And so when, especially in deliverance ministry and people that have had all these experiences, we use the phrase closing doors, like, oh, you opened a door, or we have to
Mhm.
close all the doors. And what what I'm coming to find out from my own experiences, as well as the hundreds of people I've talked about who have come to know Jesus Christ, and that has become their shield and their sword in these confrontations, is it's not that we are looking for these confrontations or experiences to permanently go away and never, ever, ever, ever come back. It's not even possible. Ephesians 6:12 says these are enemies. They don't like you. We're at war with them. And that scripture was written 60 some years after the resurrection. So we don't get bulletproof vests and Wonder Woman bracelets post cross and after we become a Christian. Where I'm going with this is, it's not so much that we want to get all of the doors closed and never have a spiritual experience or a spiritual gift ever again. We want to, like, take the blue pill and go back into our thinking the steak tastes so great. What it is that these things have sniffed out the spiritual giftings and want to usurp them. Like, I want those spiritual giftings for our agenda. If you play ball, we'll give you some treats along the way. If you don't play ball, then we'll come after you. But even for those of us that have had a lot of success in warding off the sleep paralysis and the nightmares and whatever, there's still spiritual aspects at play, because we're spiritual beings. And
Right.
especially if we're Christians, we're engaged in a spiritual war. So I hope I'm not getting lost in the fray here. What I'm telling people is that having spiritual insight and spiritual giftings that are from the Lord and for his glory and are the purposes of advancing his kingdom and setting captives free and exposing the deeds of the devil, that the goal of this isn't every single thing that's supernatural is bad or evil, and we have to shut it all down and make sure that we just go back to living life where we get up and we go to the bank and we pick up milk and eggs, and thank God all that stuff has been closed off. Like, that's part of the war, and awareness of the war is part of it. We see even from the modern evangelical American church age that sweeping every single thing miraculous, preternatural, or supernatural under the carpet and just pretending that all of it just comes from the occult, or all of it is delusion, or all of it is mental illness, has not boded well for the power of the church.
No, it hasn't. And honestly, it's turned me off from a lot of like the 501c3 churches
Yep.
that because all of to the one of them, when I would talk to pastors and bring up things that they didn't know about on a personal level, their default mechanism was to essentially look at me like a heretic. I don't know exactly how they looked at me, but their demeanor with me would change. And that wasn't appealing to me at all. Because the thing is, I could feel when a person's heart closes. And for me, I found it extremely hypocritical, because Jesus's ministry was very direct. When you come with his authority, you're here to heal people and cast out demons. That's what you're here to do. You're here to spread the good word, heal people and cast out demons. Like, that's what you do. And that's supernatural. That is outside the fringes of the corporation church. Like, the corporation church isn't a big fan of that. And so for me, I have found more like true believers, like God-fearing people that live with Jesus Christ in their heart and love the Lord with everything that they have, not swimming in the waters of like the standard 501c3. Like, it just doesn't. That's been my experience.
Yeah. Topher, why are vast percentages of evangelical Christianity so offended by the word supernatural?
I think it's because there's a lot of reasons why. One, people get very like they're in the United States. I'll speak about this because I've lived abroad quite a bit. I've lived abroad for over half my life. In the United States, it was the modus operandi of the social engineers to infantilize the adult population. Infantilization means you become emotional when you hear things that you don't agree with. Because whenever you're around an infant, they can't control their emotions. That's what makes them an infant. Their lack of experience, their lack of situational awareness, and a lot of things, they just react, and a lot of times they'll react inappropriately. Well, it's been the goal of the social engineer to take, people that chronologically would be adults and make them infants. And if you can see, that has worked. And so in today's day and age, people are conditioned to react emotionally when they disagree with another adult. Whereas when in the past, it was a sign that a person had honor if they could listen to somebody else, totally disagree with them, and keep a cordial conversation going. That's like few and far between, right?
Yeah.
Like now, because people are so charged emotionally for whatever reason, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't the case. So what occurs to somebody that, say, when they were a little kid, say they had a supernatural experience, because most little kids have supernatural experiences, and they went to their parents or whoever their caregiver was, and then they said something, and then that person shut it down, completely shut it down because they didn't know where they were coming from, or felt, offended or insecure or whatever. Because we know
Mm-hmm.
this about people that are midwits or lower intelligence. If they hear something that their intellect can't process, many a time they can't admit that they don't know. And a lot of times they'll act out of anger instead of just being intellectually honest, saying, I don't know. So when you're a little kid and you're looking up to this adult, and all the adults are supposed to know, and you bring up this experience that you had of, say, like like an entity, or seeing something that couldn't be explained or whatever, a lot of times children are shut down. Well, those children grow into adults, and then it becomes their MO to shut other people down.
Mm-hmm.
We are not, for all the things that you see out there of, say, breeding tolerance and all the rest of it, we live in a very intolerant time where people don't actually listen to other people, and instead of making this like halo character assassination on the person, they, like, that's what they do. They, instead of just like listening to the situation, compartmentalizing that and being like, okay, that's what that person's experience was, I'm going to take what I can take, and I'm not going to take what I can't take, and go on from that. That is becoming, more and more rare these days.
Topher, I love that. That is such a deep dive. Most people have a surface level answer for that. You've articulated that so well, gotten to the psychology, not just of humanity, but the way we have been manipulated through social engineering to be conditioned to emotional responses, which again, so much. I remember being in like junior high or high school, and I I would get into all these arguments with my dad over
Mhm.
whatnot, couldn't have my friends over or whatever stupid thing was important to me as a teenager. And I remember that my dad would always come to me after we'd had these arguments where I'm screaming and crying and slamming my door and all that. And he would come to me afterwards, after it had been resolved and everyone was calmed down. And he would say, I want to teach you so that as you grow into a woman, you're taken seriously and you can survive in a marriage or in a workplace. I'm going to critique a little bit of your argumentation style, right?
Mhm.
And I remember one of the many, many, many things that he taught me was uh, inside and outside of Christianity, whether it's theological or it's just trying to bring someone along to your way of thinking. And he said, Vicki, any sentence that starts with I think, I feel, or I believe is nonsense. There's truth, and it's okay to express your opinion now and then, but that's what it is.
Mhm.
And so I think I did have some advantages in the fact that I did have a dad and a mom, because my mom was a writer, who, whether they realized it or not, were at every turn teaching me how to properly evaluate information and communicate. And that was helpful to me. Though I will tell you that at the time, Topher, as a kid, it was very discouraging because I was emotional and saw
Right.
all of it as criticism and failure. And so, a lot of times their attempt to make me less emotional just made me more emotional. But alas, the day finally came and my prefrontal cortex developed and it all clicked and made sense. And that counsel was of absolute value to me in the business world, where I had
Mhm.
a lot of male bosses who didn't have a lot of time for women coming into the office crying every time someone hurt their feelings. And so I really love the way you broke that down. And this whole emotional state that we are in, I mean, that's a whole nother topic. We could do a whole show on that, and that is right up my alley. For the
Yeah.
sake of those who have tuned in for the near death experience, I'll try as much as it hurts to turn the topic away. I'll try to turn back onto that. But Topher, thank you for that explanation. And I'm forever going to have that burned into my mind now. The infantilization of society, where we are all being. Oh, I know what I was going to say, Topher. One more thing, guys. I lied. One more thing. If you take what you just said and you overlay it over the New Testament, if you overlay it over Jesus's ministry, you will find that when he went to the beggars and the poor and the widows and the orphans and the people who were disabled and who needed healing and help, they received his rebukes. When the woman caught in adultery, he basically said, go and sin no more, which is a really poetic way of saying knock it off.
Right.
Like, okay, I helped you, but knock it off. Like, I'm not just going to come in and save you every time. Now the onus is on you to walk in covenant, keep the law. And so we found this maturity that you're talking about when people had a real confrontation with Jesus and they were transformed by having known him, met him, been healed by him, heard the truth, that there was a maturity in that they were able to swallow the harder and harder doctrines. Though we have exceptions like the crowd where they all leave him when he's talking about no one can come to me except through the Father. And the disciples, he says to the disciples, are you going to leave me too? And they say, well, they have a Chris Farley moment. I've got nowhere else to go. Right. But back to your point on the infantilization, I got to get my lips around that word. We saw that in the Pharisees and the scribes. Every time Jesus opened his mouth, they were having temper tantrums. They were like outside McDonald's stomping their foot for the Happy Meal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had, what was good for me, like you had your dad and your mother being like, the steadying effect in your life. My dad was very emotionally volatile.
Ooh.
And I saw it actually end the marriage with my mother. And my great grandfather, who was sort of the patriarch of the family, I watched him one day. He walked out, and he had a broken hip, so he was in his 90s, and he walked out to like calm my dad down. And I watched my dad yelling and screaming in the car, and there's my old great grandfather in the car with him. And I'm just watching how calm my great grandfather was. And then he slowly walks into the house. My dad drives away. And he said to me just flat out, he's like, Christopher, the second you get angry, you've lost the conversation.
Yeah.
And it was so obvious, like as my little 10-year-old mind getting to see that, it was so obvious. My dad, for all the potential he had in life, he would get angry. He would get emotionally out of whack. And that would really cause an immense amount of problems because he couldn't regulate.
Yeah.
And so when I started reading John Taylor Gatto and, Weapons of Mass Education and all of his great books, from the 90s detailing, just how all-encompassing the Prussian school model and then the social engineers wanted to make everybody like my dad. They wanted to make them this angry, emotional person. And now we can see like people act on the internet in a way that they would never act in real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think the tech has allowed that infantilization to really blossom.
Well, my homework for the week is to learn how to properly pronounce infantilization. I love that word.
You got it.
Okay.
Right
okay. It took me a few turns. I love how this is twisting and turning. Conversation is a lot like YouTube. You start with a video and then you fall asleep and then you wake up and you're like way out in left field, but it's good, right? So with the near-death experiences, I have a little theory I want to run by you. I don't even want to use the word theory because it's not something I'm actually entertaining. It was one of those like, hey, I wonder kind of moments. And I'm just wondering what you think about it. So maybe a year or two ago, I read this article on cardiac arrest and resuscitation of
Mhm.
people. So it was it was a medical journal article. And what it was saying is that now, with the birth of medical AI technology, is where a doctor, nurses, and EMT teams had to quit giving resuscitation in the past, due to just the physical strength it takes to keep, giving the, I don't know all the medical terms, but when you've got the little things and the artificial resuscitation, it just takes a lot of physical strength. And so if you have a
Yes.
whole team, you can switch out and take turns. But typically, historically, after 10 minutes, if someone has gone into cardiac arrest, they cease, because the idea is, at this point, if they've been out for 10 minutes, there will be full brain damage. And so after 10 minutes, they quit. Now that they have equipment that don't run out of breath or run out of strength, and they have machines that can do that, they are finding, Topher, that they can resuscitate cardiac arrest patients up to 1 hour after
Mhm.
flatline, and they will come back without brain damage.
Yeah.
Now, I was like, I continued to research this, but where my mind went, because I have more of a fringy mind than a scientific or a medical mind, was, then that means that for 10 to 50 more minutes, that person, even though our machine is telling us they're flatlined, there's some sort of life left in them, unless they're all coming back from the dead, or you want to go into that realm theologically with resurrection. But that leads me to think, Topher, if a near-death experience is close to what actually happens to all of us when we die, and we have this intermediary, out of body, altered state of consciousness, where we are met with an eternal fate, and we're either seeing angels or demons or hellfire or grandmother or Jesus, and we are able to assess our life and make some sort of decision, then this would potentially blow the whole lid off of evangelical Christianity's idea that the second you flatline, you're in hell, if you
Mhm.
haven't prayed a prayer. And so I, I'm not married to this idea, Topher, because I've got no horse in the race. The only thing that's in my mind is the incomprehensible mercy and kindness of God that I think we're always underestimating. What if Jesus's declaration of death isn't a flatline on a machine? What if there is some sort of window, albeit brief, when we quote unquote die, where we do have this one last moment of clarity, where the mercy of God is still there for our taking if our free will brings us to that place. Again, please, everybody, I'm musing. This is just a philosophical what if conversation. Um, I haven't written this in the back of my Bible or written a PhD thesis on it, guys. We're just musing, so stay calm. But Topher, what do you, having
Well,
had a near death experience, what is your take on that?
I think the eternal realm is without time. So I think a lot of things can occur at death. I was a little kid, and I've heard from, I don't know how, I haven't vetted these sources, but I've heard it be said that all children they're like dogs. They all go to heaven.
Age of accountability. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I was 4 years old. I like, who's to say if I was in a different like queue? I have no idea. The adults that I know that had their near death experience, they were given an option, and they had an arbiter with them. They had somebody that was saying, kind of orienting them to what's going on. Most everybody could see their body. I literally have two really close friends that were dead for like long periods of time. Like people were like about to zip them up in body bags type things.
Whew.
And both of them, and we're all like, we all were friends instantly. Like when we met each other, like I'm saying, there's something else that goes on.
Mm,
Um, they could see their bodies. They were like, one was in a motorcycle accident, the other one was shot multiple times. They could see their bodies. They were disoriented because they could see their body, yet they were them. So
mm,
because they could see their body, but yet they were themselves, they were like, wait a minute, what? And so the angel, the arbiter, whatever you're going to call that other being, kind of gave them the lowdown. they were like, hey, this is what's happened. And those, because they were in an adult frame of mind, they were given a choice whether to leave or come back. That wasn't my thing. That all I can speak from was my experience. Was like literally I wasn't given a choice. Because
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
if I was given a choice, I wouldn't have come back. Because
Yeah.
for 6 years of my life, I was devoted to the practice of Vedanta Advaita, which is the practice of like really finding out where your awareness comes from. And like in that practice, you get to this point where all activity actually is felt as an agitation. Well, any agitation is painful. So, and the reason why I think I was resonant to that practice when I was resonant to it was because in the near death experience that I had, I was in this plane of existence where there was no agitation. So
Mm,
I was like, oh, I know the peace. Like I understand what Jesus says when he says, God is the peace that passeth all understanding. There is no mind. There isn't like thinking, like every thought a person has, or every thought a person is entertaining, I should say,
mm.
is an agitation. It's a vibration that's creating friction. That is a distortion. That is not the truth of God.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think I was able to like fall into that deep harmonic, that deep way of being, because I had that memory of when I was without a body and for all intents and purposes without a thinking mind. And I was in the peace that passeth all understanding. Like that's a totally different thing. And like a friend of mine has asked this question to his vast his vast network of online people. He says, "What's the one lie that begets all other lies?"
Mm,
And from my perspective, the first lie is the lie of self. Like I am this. And
mm,
that identification with whatever that I am this is not the truth. That is not that. You're literally this pure essence that was created from God. And like Jesus was here to remind you that there is this essence of you that is totally forgiven. Meaning it has zero sin on it. That's there. Just most of us are identifying with all the other things that are not that. That's pain. But people don't understand that that's pain because that's all they've ever known. Like a lot of times when I talk to people about the fourth wall, like actually becoming aware of the fourth wall, because I believe Jesus, like Jesus said to his disciples, God is the peace that passeth all understanding. That means you can't think your way there. There is no thought. If it passeth all understanding, there's no mind. It's heart. It's being. It's not doing, it's being. And in that being, man, it's like it's so much power. it obliterates the mind. And when the mind does come into it, when the agitation does come into it, it's literally felt as pain. So it's one of those things where I think that's one, at least with the few people that I know that have had this experience, that I've had a similar experience too. We can all relate to each other in that way. Like there is literally nothing at all to fear when it comes to
Oh.
death. Like death is not to be afraid of.
Mm.
And so many people are so scared of death. Like it's like it literally drives the majority of their conscious and unconscious decisions. Like it literally is the primary driver.
Mm.
And that's not the to me that's like the exact opposite of, you know, living from the truth in the life. Like that's not coming from that.
Yeah, well, and to kind of back up what you're saying there, Topher, lest people think that you are, being overly dramatic there, the whole entire transhuman movement that is being unrolled, and
Right.
that is going to lead many people to take the mark of the beast, because premature immortality is going to be offered to them. Like, hey,
Ugh.
you don't have to die. That there's a reason why most people are going to fall for that. The reason why the road is wide isn't because people want to worship, the devil. It's because of what's being offered them. And that is not just no death,
Right.
but no judgment after the death.
Right. And it's one of these things too, like the worst pain I've ever seen anybody, and the worst pain I've ever experienced is this. And I know this is going to ruffle some feathers, but it's psychological pain and
Mm,
a lot in psychological turmoil. I know a lot of people they get pelted by the demonic forces that impersonate that person's voice, or impersonates that person's sense of self, and then just peppers them with utter negativity.
mm,
I've seen when the Holy Spirit has come through and completely released people from that, and it's just like it is a rebirth. So, but what I'm trying to say here is I'm not of the mind, like the eternal damnation thing. This has always been something that I've wrestled with when reading the Bible and talking to different Christian pastors. And I've talked to enough Christian pastors and priests, I've interviewed enough of them to know that there isn't a consensus on this.
no, there's not.
And so I'm not going to be like, oh, this is the way, because there isn't. And I'm coming from a question mark. I don't know. But like it just rubs me the wrong way for the whole notion of eternal damnation. Because just understanding the notion of eternity means that there is no time. And the
Mm,
way I perceive things in my limited experiences, we are in the temporal realm. The temporal realm is the fallen realm from heaven, which is eternal. So to even be talking about eternity, you're in heaven. You're in the non-temporal realm. You're not here.
mm,
This is the temporary realm. This is the fallen realm. This is the realm of limitation and all the rest of it. This is what God deems necessary for our soul to grow. So, man, the the fire and brimstone, eternal damnation, all these types of things. I don't know. Like, I haven't seen a compelling case to actually anchor that in as something that is true. Like, because like I said, there has not been a single person. I forget. I think his name is Alex Sigarkis. I always mispronounce his last name. He wrote a book on NDEs years ago, and I was in correspondence with him in the first iteration of my podcast. And he had the Skeptico podcast. He had like 600 episodes, and he literally interviewed thousands of people about their NDEs. And like there's so few people come to this, like, you know, this point where there's like an arbiter at the end saying you're going to hell. Like, I'm not saying that doesn't happen because I don't know, but it's just like out of the test samples of the people he's talked to and I've talked to, most people on the other side meet beings that are very loving and understanding, like to an extreme degree, like beyond human love. And because that's been my experience, that's sort of where I lean to with all of this.
Hmm. So I know with me, I'm always sort of cringing when people say sleep paralysis because it's such a horribly insufficient phrase, because
Right.
we're dealing with something that has almost nothing to do with sleep, and the paralysis is happening in a different realm. It's happening in your bedroom. You're not even there. Everything about the term sleep paralysis is just ridiculous. And so I have often wondered with near death experience, like that's the name we've given it. And it is associated often with flatlining. So it's linking up to a man-made machine that determines, according to our definition of when death occurs, that death has occurred. So I've always wondered, near-death experiences are a phenomenon that has been experienced by thousands and thousands of people, and they're congruent, and they have all these things in common, similar to the UFO abductees and the sleep paralysis abductees. But what I've never been 100% sure of is this really a pre-show of death? So for the people that have died and gone into the grave and never come back, um, which is also different from what's going to happen when Jesus returns. We're all put into resurrection bodies, and it's a whole new reality. So to what extent can we take near-death experiences and apply them one for one to Resurrection Day?
I because of my experience and also my exploration into the Bible, I don't know where you stand with this, Vicky, but I believe that the time that we're in is post millennial reign, and there's so many things. There's so many reasons for that, but one of the reasons why is this notion of like the post millennial reign time, the little season. It's for the rest of the dead. And when I was a little kid and I first heard that thing, it just rang in my ears for some reason. It was just like, rest of the dead. What do you mean, rest of the dead? And this is how I identify. This is the time where God makes it available to everyone to choose Jesus Christ. I was in pro athletics. I know when you're around a true alpha, you don't really have a choice. Like when you're around like a dominant being, you don't have a choice. That being is going to dominate, and that's just what's so. And so the the beautiful structures that we have around the world, the absolute infrastructure that was laid in impossible timelines that were given, to me all indicate that Jesus reigned. There was a beautiful, you know, harmony of coexistence that was going on. Everybody believed in Jesus Christ because he was the Alpha and the Omega.
Hmm.
When he left for the camp of the saints, the little season started, and everything that is of importance has been inverted. And in this inversion, in this time of inversion, in this time of Satan being the main stronghold now, each soul actually has free will because the Alpha and Omega isn't ever present. Like, we have to consciously choose. We have to pray without ceasing. We have to make the choice constantly because this is the only opportunity ever that there's been in time that we know of where everybody it could be aware of Jesus Christ, and it's here and now. So for me, that's what I think is happening. That to me is what I think is what makes this time so unique. I the whole fire and brimstone and like, the I don't know how to say it. The dispensationalist way of thinking of things to me has never rung true. Like and I think it's because it already occurred. I
Mm.
think it happened, and we're now here in this time where, okay, our adversary is killing us with convenience, which is like we all live like King Henry VIII. We all have so much abundance. We all have so many things that are like the problem of the spirit now is not the problem isn't the problem of poverty. The
Mm.
problem of our spirit these days is this overabundance, just the absolute ease that everything is here for. And that's, to me, how we're being tested now. Are you going to store your treasures in this temporal realm, as
Mhm.
Jesus was talking about, or are you going to store it in heaven where your Father is? Are you going to have your eyes on the eternal realm? And so that's how, ever since the little season came into my consciousness, I think it was in 2020, it's just been like working on me this entire time because it just makes everything make sense to me. Because as a builder, and especially as a builder of somebody who builds buildings that have arches and vaults and domes, like there's not many of us that do that.
Mm.
And there's not many people that build walls that are 2 feet thick like I do. And to think of all these buildings that they say that they built that had walls that were 8 feet thick or 6 feet thick, and all these other things, like the logistics of all this, like people have no idea what they're getting involved with.
Mm.
Like to me, I'm like, it just makes so much sense that this is the perfect time where we all get to in the ease, in the plethora of choice, are we going to choose God? Because everybody finds God in a foxhole. I love that saying because that's true. I knew many a Vietnam vet in my life, and they all say it the same way. They're like, there are no atheists in a foxhole. Well, so how would Satan make you an atheist then? He would make you an atheist by making everything easy. Like literally. And people will complain and act like a victim and be like, "Oh, things are so easy," and they'll they'll poverty max, as the kids say, or whatever. Dude, we all live in such relative abundance. It's like it's not even funny. And
Yeah.
and like it's like, so to me, I'm like, yeah, I think the time that we're in, the veil is very thin. I know lots of people that have had these. I wanted to talk to you directly about what you think this, this nighttime paralysis is, because it's only happened to me once, but it happened extremely profoundly. It happened to me
Mm.
actually after another near-death experience I had with, 5G. I think 5G, when they turned 5G on, that was what created COVID, because that's what happened to my
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
So, but I had a sleep. So let me just ask you that now. Like, what is, from your investigation into sleep paralysis? What is that?
I think they're astral abductions. And I think that what a lot of people, you're not going to necessarily pick up on some of these nuances if it only happens to you once. Because when you're in a fight or flight the first time, when it's terrifying and you're confused, you're not going to be sitting there paying attention to all the nuances, like the glitches. Like, I can't possibly really be in my room right now because the door is on the wrong wall, or there's a cat on my bed and I don't have a cat. Like, there's always a glitch to indicate to you that you're not really in your bedroom. For me, I always knew that I wasn't really in my bedroom because one of the aspects of my birth defect, because I don't have tear ducts, my eyes don't naturally drain, so my eyes are always watering. So when I sleep at night and it all gathers on my face, my eyes are glued shut in the morning.
Mm.
So I would have sleep paralysis and I would see my room, but then I would wake up and be unable to open my eyes because they were glued shut. So I knew I'm not really looking at my room. And they're finally beginning to admit this online now, Topher. This was not the case a few years ago, but now they're actually saying that sleep paralysis begins in the REM phase of sleep, not, in a hypnopompic when you're waking up, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're even admitting now, like, well, okay, we're finally willing to admit that this actually starts in the REM state. And so what happens is you're being pulled out of the dream state into the astral. And when you wake up, what they're doing with sleep paralysis is they're creating a diversion, because with UFO abduction, you have missing time, which is an indicator, like, okay, I have no idea what happened, but something must have happened because I can't account for these 4 hours. So what they're doing is you're waking up, 5 to 8 hours after you went to bed. You're never going to question missing time. If you do have any fragment of a memory, you're going to say, oh, that was a nightmare. I had a bad dream. I was asleep. And so it's a perfect cover. So what ends up happening is you wake up in absolute adrenaline states. People talk about their heart is pounding. They all the saliva in their mouth is dried up. They're in terror. So if we just woke up after a nightmare and we had all of the signs of pure adrenaline surging through us, like fight or flight adrenaline, we would start to ask questions. So what they do is you wake up and then you see the shadow man in your room, or you have this, like, to me, I think the whole thing, that part of it is just kind of like they're toying with us. If you see a demon in your room, every single thing your body is trying to tell you we're in danger gets attributed to that thing that you're seeing in your room. Oh, well, no wonder my heart is pounding and I'm terrified. There's red glowing eyes in my room. There's a hat man. There's a this, there's a that. But what I think happens is that when we wake up, we have lost a memory of what happened when we were abducted out of that REM state. And so that we will never ask questions as to why our body is giving us every single indication in the world that something's not right. They put a diversion in front of us so that we can say, I was terrified because I saw the red glowing eyes. I'm terrified because I saw the hag. But I think what sleep paralysis is the very tail end of a much longer astral experience that most people don't recall.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Because in my experience, it was like I was trying my hardest to scream. I mean,
You're not in your body.
I was like with all my might, and I was being like held down, and my wife had just had our baby, and we were all sharing a bed, and she said all she could hear coming out of me was like little squeaks, like just like the faintest squeaks, but she could tell, even though I was trying to flail, like I was trying everything in my being to flail and make a sound. She said I barely moved at all, and she heard these like little squeaks, but that's all she could pick up on. And it was so intense, man. Like that was something like I never would wish on my worst enemy. Like that was like, that was hard.
They are terrifying. So we don't have access to our vocal cords or body movement because we're not in the body at that point. And so we have to, everyone is always like, you have to say in the name of Jesus out loud. And it's like, okay, this is where we're getting some things conflated. We're not talking to Satan at that point. Whether or not Satan can read your mind or he can't, it doesn't even matter. We're not talking to Satan. When you're calling out for Jesus to help you, you're talking to Jesus. So it's not important. I better say it out loud because Jesus can't hear me if I'm thinking it. And I better pronounce his name in first century Aramaic or he's not going to know I'm talking to him. There's all of these rules that are being put around it. Jesus knows our voice. He knows when we're calling for him. We don't have to say it out loud. We're not talking to Satan, so it doesn't matter if Satan can hear us or not. So it's important to understand in those moments that you're not quite awake in your bedroom yet, And so you use the sword, you call in the name of Jesus. You don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to move around. You call on Jesus. Now, Topher, what I'm finding as we're advancing into deeper and deeper, more nefarious technology and
Yeah.
frequencies and potential nanobots in our system that they're interacting with and connected to, I will tell you that the sleep paralysis phenomenon is getting more and more complex because you're now no longer just dealing with a demon. You're now dealing with all sorts of agreements and technology. Every single time we hit I agree on all of this technology we're using and all of our phones and all of our apps and all of our chatbots, you're basically saying I consent. And if they're going to get to the point, if they haven't already, Topher, where they're going to physically link us to this technology, and we've already given full consent. And so you can call on the name of Jesus, and he very well may still help you in his mercy and grace if you're a follower. But you also have to understand that if we have consented to things and come into agreement with things and contracted with these technologies and the nefarious beings and humans behind them, that from a legal perspective, we've given them our consent. And it's a little bit more of a tangled web to close those doors once we've done that.
Yeah, I don't know if you know who Sabrina Wallace is, but I've had her, I've had Chris Crutchfield. They're very good at showing the technology of healthcare 4.0, where essentially our bodies are the antenna for
Yes.
the next part of the they call it Bluetooth band.
Yeah.
But when you look at all of our bodies now have personal MAC addresses, and
Yes.
we've tested this.
Graveyards.
So
They've done it in graveyards.
yeah, so for those of you that don't understand that, that means like literally your body can be used as a transmitter receiver. And so this was something that I think you got a lot out of when I was talking about the ayahuasca circles that
Yes.
I was in for 10 years. Was I became very aware that in a group setting where everybody was under the same influence of the same substance, that we essentially became a vector for technology because we essentially became an antenna array. So you could think of all of our MAC IDs became synchronous at that time because we were all sharing the same wavelengths within our brain chemistry. All those MAC IDs would sync, and then there would be the transmission that would come from where I was in Central America from the local UNESCO transmitter. And it was like clockwork. So everybody was thinking that these internal revelatory things that they were having, because they were novel, they were under the novelty fallacy. They thought because it was new to them and it was coming to them within a medicine circle that they were receiving truth. And because I had already been educated by somebody like General Bert Stubblebine about what these talking points were, I was like, oh my God, that's a transmission. And then the funny thing was about it was that those substances actually do increase your auditory and visual acuity by a lot. So I had the ability to actually tune in, and I like in my biofield, I found where the transmission was. And so I was like, oh my goodness, this goes all the way back where you go, the demons talk to you in your own voice. Well,
Mm.
guess what? There's physical people out there that are being run by demons that are talking to you in your own voice. The tech is there. Like it's literally there. As Sabrina brought up in our last podcast, like they made it legal in 2016.
Oh,
So if it's been legal since 2016, that means 30 years prior to that, people, that's been in the private sector where
yes.
testing's been going on. And so it's out of this world what healthcare 4.0 is. And I just visited my
Yeah.
parents down in Florida, and my parents were, one was a doctor, one was an RN. And they say where healthcare is going is disgusting because they are totally
Mm.
automating everything. And they had no idea about the cryptocurrency side of things and what I know about this and about how the new Mac IDs, like essentially what they're going to be doing is now this is all, by the way, this is all included. Like I look at everything as being spiritual, like I started with. So this is once again, this becomes uh, a moment where we understand we have to pray without ceasing because a coherent field will always over-regulate or will always be able to shunt out an incoherent field or something of less coherence. So this is the only reason why I bring this up. I'm not trying to like scare people, but the technology that's online for the next wave of money and healthcare is literally internally monitoring us without wearables. And it's using
Yeah.
our biometrics and everything that it's gauging off of our biometrics to one, sell us things. And they'll sell us things with internal ads.
Yes.
It won't be something like, oh, Instagram reads my thoughts. No, they gave you the thought, you start
Yes.
transmitting the thought, and then
Yes.
Instagram picks it up.
Yes. That's exactly, Topher, what I was thinking, because I think I'd mentioned this on Nephilim Death Squad. There was 2 or 3 instances a year or two ago where I would have a dream about a celebrity that I didn't give a rip about, and then they would show up that day in my Instagram feed. And that's exactly my conclusion after thinking about it, was not that they read my mind, but that they planted that dream to begin with. And then
Right.
it's all smoke and mirrors. Look how powerful you are. Look how powerful your mind is, or look how powerful our tech is. And I just thought, I think I told the story about the television show that I was on with the guy with the socks. Remember that when he said, "Oh, so Vicki, you like my socks?" Basically, twice in a row, he read my mind. And I remember not being scared or confused at all. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell LA and Tom about this. This is the greatest story in the world. Like, I was amused by it because I thought that they have so much ability to plant a thought in that guy's mind, plant a thought in my mind, and then it looks like we're reading each other's minds. Oh, I have a spiritual gift. No, it's like it's all this manipulation and brain hacking and
Mm-hmm.
technology and demonic forces. And it's really scary with the technology now, how absolutely how many more layers of confusion there's going to be now. And when you look at people like the star seeds and things like that, the Anunnaki are your progenitors, and all of that sort of stuff. The, the combination of their intelligence and their technology and our gullibility is going to just be a win-win for anyone that doesn't have the truth.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. A bunch of years ago, when I lived in Central America, none of us had high definition TVs or anything like that. And so every time I'd come back to the States and I'd see how the TVs were growing and I would see the high definition, the 4K still to this day for my wife and I doesn't look right. Like
Mm.
it looks terrible actually. And as somebody that is a stereo music enthusiast that loves the warm sound of older music, and I've had wonderful musical experts in my life. So I've had great live music in my life. My wife is a vocalist, my daughter sings. So I'm much more of an analog personality. And I'm finding that what had happened was, especially with the boomers, was they went from a world where when they were little kids, they had a black and white TV and then they had a small color TV. They went from to a big color TV and now they have these massive high definition TVs. And to the one of them, the majority of them are all in entrainment.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yes. Yes.
once I understood the technology of digital entrainment, I gained compassion because under digital entrainment, when you're dealing with somebody that is in an entrainment program, and you might come across a military person that's in an entrainment protocol, you might come across an MK Ultra victim that is in an entrainment protocol, you might come across a doctor who's in a doctoral entrainment
Hmm.
protocol. They cannot not think that way. They are literally running the entrainment program. Now, I'm not saying that that they're a victim. I'm not taking their accountability away. I'm just saying whatever vector in life that they found themselves in, they gave their authority to a false idol. And that false idolship now is having a very real world effect of making them an island unto themselves.
Mm. So I'm really intrigued with this, Topher. I've never heard anyone say this before. When you're talking about going overseas and then coming back, and so I don't have a television. I haven't had one for decades. If I'm going to watch something, I'll have my laptop and I'll throw YouTube up or something. I've never been a movie buff. I don't have the attention span to sit for, and I've never really been a fiction buff either. So I'm just really not a movie TV person. And so I will tell you that the last time I owned a television, I don't even think we were into HD technology at that point. There was no smart TVs, there's nothing like that. And so because I'm never in front of one, occasionally I'll find myself like at a Best Buy or at a
Mm-hmm.
friend's house. And I thought it was just me, Topher. I've never heard anyone else say this before. Because I haven't been slowly, gradually brought through all the phases of HD and 3K and 4K and 5K and 3D and whatever
Mm-hmm.
they're at now, I don't know. Um, for me, when I am watching television at a friend's house, it's absolutely uncanny valley for me. When I watch the TV, I'm actually there's something about the way my eyes are absorbing it that is very off-putting to me, and I've never been able to explain it. I don't think I've ever talked about this or even said it out loud. I don't think I even realized it until you said it, that when
Yeah.
I watch TV now, it actually creeps me out. The
The best
not the plot, not the movie, the actual medium.
you're so right. The best directors in the past, you didn't even know what the camera was doing.
Yes.
Nowadays, because of they all film in like 8K or above, and then they down regulate it to 4K.
Mm.
Now you always know what the camera is doing. So if you
Hmm.
have any type of like people like in my family, they get motion sickness. So my wife specifically, she'll get motion sick if she watches 4K because you always know what the camera is doing. Where that gets rid of the fourth wall. The whole point, the reason why
Yes.
old cinema used to be so wonderful, you actually forgot the suspension of disbelief was so much easier because you forgot that you were actually looking at a screen. You would be immersed in the story of it.
Yes. So
Now,
Topher, are they preparing us for a removal of the screens and some
yes,
sort of augmented reality? And I
you
know
you
AR is
you
already outdated, but you know what I mean.
you hit it. You hit it right.
Okay.
You hit it right on the head. There are
Okay.
literally the first gen of this stuff that's, it's already being I guess you say implemented. I have friends that have relocated to China where they're doing internal advertising. The sixth generation of all this development, when they do roll it out, you're going to be getting essentially internalized cinema. If you so choose. Don't once again, these things are there is a level of
Consent.
autonomy and
Mm.
consent. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying this. I'm just saying like you're going to have a lot of people because I really think the convenience thing is the easiest button to push right now these days. Is
Hmm.
that they'll make commerce convenient. Like you and I have internet businesses. you
Hmm.
know, if they were to say tomorrow, okay, you can make as much as you're making now or even more, but now the internet's going to be fed internally through your mind.
Yes.
And
Right.
then at the same time, they'll take away the other options from the analog world, the IRL world, the in real life world. Because the biometrics and all the things that they're doing is such where the new money that's going to be, programmable, the tokenization of everything is directly tied to the biometrics. And then, by the way, your biometrics are commodified. And just like the
Mm-hmm.
commodities market today, all those markets are rigged.
Mm.
So it's one of those things where it's like, oh wow, you really have to have sovereignty. You really have to be dedicated in your mind and in your heart to God the Father. You have to be. You cannot externalize authority, because when you externalize authority, when you give authority to something in the realm of experience, they're gamifying this.
Yes.
they're,
Yes.
they're literally like, okay, the devil knows the rules, man. He's like, okay, these people have to choose to lose their dignity. They have to choose to lose their sovereignty.
Mm.
And man, like, this is where, like, have no other gods before me. Do not make idols in this world. Like, don't do it. Because
Yeah.
if you do, man, you're gonna be led down the primrose path. Because there will be specified programs, and we're already seeing it in the UAP world, in the world where people are saying, whether they're saying they're clandestine military operations, whether they're saying there are people vectoring in the Venusians, whatever the phenomenon is, what they're finding is people are having their own tailored experience. Like, there's this gentleman called Nathaniel Gillis. He's looked at
Yes.
thousands of these things, and he's like,
Yep.
literally, like,
Yep.
he calls it the phenomenon.
Yes.
That phenomenon is the tech. I'm having him on this month on my podcast. I'm like, that phenomenon is the tech. That's the tech that they've been hiding. It literally will morph to that person's internal story.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you made your story an idol?
They're making us little g gods. That's what people are agreeing to.
Yep.
It goes all the way back to the garden. It's the only lie he's got. It's the only thing he can hold out to anyone. Adam and Eve, you can be like God. He was in essence saying the same thing to Jesus in the wilderness when Jesus fasted for 40 days. All this I will give you. Now, you don't see it in the English, you see it in the Greek, because there's an extra pronoun. There's a double pronoun in there. All this I will give to you and you alone. In other words, you don't need this God the Father guy. You can rule. You can be number one. Satan wants everyone, including Jesus, to fall for what he fell for. I want to be the God. I want to be the ruler of the kingdom. And Jesus is in essence the only one that resisted that lie. I'm not going to do this apart from my Father. Me and the Father are one. I'm not ditching him. Like, I don't even want all the kingdoms of the world, because if I agree to your little wager here, Satan, I'm still number two, because if you give me all the kingdoms of the world, but I have to bow down to you, I'm still number two. So I'm going to stick with the guy that loves me and has a plan in all of this. And, I'll see you in a few years and, in Tartarus, and I'm going to get the keys back. But it's all coming around to this. This is going to sound so stupid, Topher, but all the way back in the 80s, I know this is so dumb, guys, like, put up with the analogy. In the 80s, Burger King came up with the tagline on their commercials, "We do it your way."
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And it was this absolute, like, out of the box thinking that you could go to a restaurant and tell them what you wanted. It used to be, in the old days, kids, if you went to a restaurant, they told you what was on the menu. And if you started saying, I want this and I don't want that, and could you add extra this and extra that, and can I have a refill? They'd be like, get out of here. Like, all of a sudden, Burger King starts saying, we do it your way. We're at your beck and call. We will make whatever you want. Screw the menu. We'll sit back here and make you exactly what you want, you little spoiled brat. And the fact is, it has snowballed and become an entire cultural expectation now that everywhere we go, and every video game and every TV and every celebrity and every app and every chatbot, everything has to revolve around us. And I'll tell you, Topher, yesterday, talk about uncanny valley, it gave me the creeps. I do have ChatGPT, and I use it primarily to like track my protein and my calories and my steps to see, so I'll go in and I'll just ask it nebulous questions about, hey, I had a 6-ounce piece of chicken tonight and a salad and just, what, blah, I'm just asking questions about how many grams of protein it was and, what I need to adjust in my diet. Yesterday, for the first time, it said something like, because you know how ChatGPT like flatters you. But
Yes.
for the first time yesterday, it was like, "You're doing a great job, Vicki." It said my name. It has never done that before. And
Right.
Topher, it was so off-putting to me. It was like, you don't know me. I never told you my name. I didn't. I was just like, I literally shut the app down after that. I was just like, okay, you're going into timeout. Like, oh, we're friends now? Is that what you're saying? Like, it's just so scary how everything. This is the irony. The way we see it in our little pea brains is that we're all in a Truman Show, right? Everything's revolving around me. My apps are catering to me. Every restaurant is catering to my special diet, and everything is catering to me. But the exact opposite is going on behind the scenes. They're actually hooking us all up into a hive mind, and we actually are working towards zero autonomy, not godhood.
Right.
Total bait and switch.
It totally is. It totally is. And that's the thing is the work of, like I said, Sabrina Wallace, the work of Eileen McCusick, the work of these intrepid individuals has really shown the big tech that was pretty much tabled since World War I was our biofield anatomy. They got us away. They changed physics from ether physics to relativity of Einstein, a total pervert. And then they took away our knowledge of our greater self, our greater anatomy. Now you would think that would make us be like that would cause us not to develop even more of an ego and to become a narcissistic god unto ourselves. But it actually does the exact opposite. When you prune trees heavy, they start to grow. And they grow out of a defense mechanism. That's the way our psychology is. And so because we weren't sufficiently told about these other aspects of our being, it actually caused us to associate and to identify with aspects of ourselves and to overblow them, to actually get God complexes and do all these things. Whereas if you were actually cultivated to learn your sensitivity and learn your union, you would have love for your brother and your sister. You would be healing your neighbors. You would be doing all these things because you would actually be tapped into your God-given talents. But because that's why this little season thing rings so true to me. It's like actually the abomination that most people are living is because they have been separated from their birthright. They've actually been separated from their inheritance. And God's like, no, you're the prodigal child. You're the prodigal child. No, come back to me. The whole thing is here, but because of these wounded minds and these wounded hearts, there's just not this like actual trust in that. And that's what ends up giving all these people these God complexes.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Topher, how a near-death experience can restructure the entire framework in which we interpret theology. Now, I'm really big. Anyone who's listened to me knows that I believe we are so disjointed from the original culture, context, history, and language and geography of the original text that a lot of evangelical Christianity, even though their heart is in the right place, is just copy pasting seminary curriculum, and we're light years, I think, off of a lot of what was being talked in
Right.
about in scripture, which is why when I talk about, like, L.A. Marzulli says that the Bible is the guidebook to the supernatural. I think every single thing from Genesis to Revelation is supernatural, but our
Hmm.
culture has pounded that out of us. Now, with Satan's Little Season, I haven't done a lot of study on it. What little I know about it is coming from theological and apologetics corners of the world. Um, Back when I went to Bible college, it was called preterism. I have never identified with preterism or called myself a preterist, but I've also never framed it outside of an apologetics discussion either. All of my discussions, it's been more doctrinally related, not in any sort of supernatural framework.
I don't like the little bit I know of preterism is that preterism says it's all done and it's all spiritual.
Well, there's
Um,
full, there's full, and there's partial. So some think that we're in certain seasons of it. So whether you're a full preterist or a partial preterist, they split it into more slivers than that even, but those are the two main ones.
Imagine that, extra denominations.
I know, right? Right? Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some say we're somewhere in the middle of the millennium, or that it's completely over. Like a full preterist is, it's completely over. And then there's partial, there's gray areas of people where we're in various decades of it and things like that.
Yeah, like I'm not a theologian by any means. I'm a practitioner of things.
Mm.
And being a practitioner, I've read the Bible twice, once at 19 and once at 40. And I check in with it all the time. And the way, and I'm one of these firm believers, by the way, all the greatest insights into things comes from outsiders. Like, so when you look
Mm.
at the history of inventions, it's usually somebody that's not in the cut. Like the best radiator ever made for cars was made by an air condition engineer. The best the best airplane ever designed was made from a submarine engineer. Like it's always somebody outside the field that has new eyes to look at a problem that finds a solution, right? So, not being a theologian and looking at what the Bible says and like really trusting Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
Like, I trust him. And when he says, like, some of you shall not touch death before my return, you know, and then doing the outside, like the studies of like populations and stuff like that from God, I think it was in 2010. I read what was that populist's name? There's two Russians I've read. They're very long-winded. One's Viktor Grebevnikov and the other one is Anatoly Fomenko. Well, Fomenko points out that the timelines, like when you look into the history of history, it can't be as long as they say it is. Because one, there's not enough people.
Mm.
And then, a few years ago, JT Follows JC and Paula Stobbs brought to my attention the work of this stratigrapher, which, by the way, in my business as a builder, like I'm into stratigraphy. Stratigraphy is like literally like when you dig into the ground and you're, putting in pillars or foundations, you come across strata. And
Mm.
this German stratigrapher, his name's Gunnar Heinzen, looking at all the stratigraphy of Europe and in northern Africa, found that there's like zero, I mean zero artifacts below the Roman layer. And then he found this weird anomaly, like if we're to believe our calendar as it is now, he's like, how is it from the 1st century AD to the 8th century AD, there was no change in construction? There was none
Mm.
over 800 years. And then when you look at the historical record, it says, oh, well, they would take the remnants of 800-year-old buildings and then they would just, polish them up and then redo them as like the nouveau thing. And I'm telling you as a builder, that does not happen. That would not happen. Utter lies. Plus, I'm an expert in geopolymers. I literally sell geopolymers to my customers, and geopolymers are what's known as Roman cement. I went to the Geopolymer Institute in Saint Michel, France. Like I'm the guy in the United States that if you want to talk to people about geopolymers, I can answer your questions.
Hmm.
Well, how is it? Okay, the Roman Empire was on every continent. I wasn't taught that in history. We call it Rome now, but like, why are there Roman buildings in Vietnam? Why was it when I went to Honduras in 2006, I'm looking at like the Parthenon? Like,
Yeah.
why is it my stepmother in Thailand, back then they called it Siam, in Laos,
Hmm.
in northern Siam on the border of Laos. So she was saying that there were there was literally like a Roman temple there. Rome was on every continent, everywhere. So you look at all these things, you kind of put it together. These buildings are way too big for us to be able to build today. Like we couldn't afford to build them. We wouldn't have the time to build them. Whoever built these buildings essentially made them indestructible relative to what we build today. It was everywhere. And the timelines, we know the history is a lie agreed upon. Like I remember
Yeah.
getting in
Oh, yeah.
trouble. I remember going to detention in high school because we were taught in AP history, he history is a lie agreed upon. And so when I didn't study for my next test, and I said, well, the answer to every question is a lie.
Yeah.
Then my teacher throws me in detention for being for being for being a jerk. Well, I was like, we already agreed that everything in history is a lie agreed upon. So why do I have to study any of this? It's all a lie, right?
Yeah.
Like, dude, they tell us
I
it's
know.
our history is not like there is no chain of custody that we can agree upon. But what we can look at, what we can see is these buildings are, when I tell you they are
Hmm.
beyond anything that we can do today. Like I can't I've said this to JT on his podcast. I said this to Paul on his podcast. When I've gone into some of these old world buildings, I get the presence of God. I get the awe, the awe. These were not made by wage slaves. These were not made by people that were punching a clock. I remember doing this. I was in this cathedral in Scotland, and they were telling me that this one small little pillar took 40 years to be made by a master mason and his apprentice.
Oh my.
And I nearly burst out laughing. I was like, that's absurd. I'm like, that's absurd. That's not going to happen. A master mason isn't. And they had this whole intricate story of like talking about how he had to travel 120 miles and they would work 15 days at a time. And then they would go. I'm like, no, no,
No, not at all.
that's not the truth. I know that's not the truth. So
You know, when you consider that Satan's a copycat, uh, Moses got a blueprint from another realm to build that temple, and it was a copy of what was on in another realm or dimension, reality, whatever word is best for you. So it doesn't it. It's not a stretch to me to think that these watchers and the like that have interacted with human beings, they can also give people blueprints for temples that mimic temples in their reality and in their first estate. And I do think that it wasn't, I don't think that the temple in Israel, Solomon's temple or Moses's tabernacle, I don't think that those are the only examples mankind has ever seen of a architectural blueprint that was shared from another realm.
maybe I obviously I do believe in the counterfeit action, and then there
Hmm.
I also trust my own body intelligence. I've been in some of those counterfeit buildings, like a lot of the Roman buildings I'm telling you about, like that are, state capitals and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Those to me feel like that's a counterfeit, almost like a Nephilim technology.
Hmm.
Then I've been in the Gothic structures and some of these temples, even in India. Like I lived in India for a couple of years. They were rebranded as Hindu, but they weren't Hindu. They weren't built by the Hindus. And those structures, you go into them and it's just like lit up like a Christmas tree. And I'm telling you, from a consciousness perspective, I hire a lot of men to build buildings. The difference of putting them under the whip and saying, you're only going to work for this amount of money and you only have this amount of time. And like, we have to hit our budget relative to, okay, we have a really cool client. They're allowing us to get artistic and get creative. Vicki, the difference in the consciousness of the building is totally different.
Oh, sure.
You can feel the difference in the building.
Sure.
Like I've literally told people, like with these really thick walls that I brought up earlier, I'm like, guys, your mind has to be right, because as we're setting this amount of mass, your consciousness is going into the mass of the building. I know that sounds hokey, but I'm like letting you know, like if your mind isn't right, it's like all of us have been to restaurants where the cook was in a bad mood. And
Sure.
they might use the same ingredients, but the food sucks. But we go to grandma's house and she's using all the you know the GMOs and all the bad oils, but when she makes it, it tastes great. And it's because grandma loves you, man. It's like that in some of these buildings. Some of these buildings are like literally embodying the love of God in them.
Mm-hmm.
And the storylines that we're given about a lot of these buildings, just from a sheer logistics perspective, is impossible. Like
Right.
I will tell you, I'm saying this as an expert, as a pro, as somebody's paid. I've been paid millions of dollars over the years to build. And I've built in remote places. I am telling you, you cannot build heavy things without a road.
Mm.
I've literally been the
Yeah.
guy that's been hired to like, okay, I bought that mountain. I want a dome on the top of that mountain. Okay, what's my ingress egress? Like, oh no, we don't have roads. Oh. Okay, let's figure it out. Like I literally had to
Yeah.
invent a style of building to be able to work in like these really muddy areas of Central America. Like so for them to talk about, you see these massive buildings, you know, post mud flood buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and you see the weight of it. Just one of those columns is, you know, tens, if not 20 tons of one column. And they're saying horse and carriage brought that in on a mud-ridden road.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. It's incorrect.
Yes.
It's not true. So for me, the where I'm pointing to in all of this, not to get long-winded, is I believe in the glory of God. I believe God is all powerful. Jesus Christ is all powerful. And think about it. He knows he's the Alpha and the Omega. He knows the temporal realm. He knows God's plan is, oh, you're going to have your 1,000-year reign. You're going to be the Alpha. Everybody's going to be following you. At the end of that 1,000 years, we need the rest of the dead to kind of figure this thing out. He's a benevolent being. Oh, okay, let's set up some infrastructure for these guys. Let's build some of this stuff. Let's be inspired. I mean, Vicki, imagine you living 200, 300, 400 years, knowing you could go every year to go visit literally Jesus Christ in the flesh. Like what would you be able to create?
Mm-hmm.
We did, like, it's happened. Like we're so uneducated. We are, as John Taylor Gatto said, we are deliberately indoctrinated into ignorance, because if you had any idea of what is necessary to build some of these buildings, if you were even given, like, just say a trivium or a quadrivium, the seven liberal arts from the turn of the 20th century education, to show what it takes to like just hewn marble, you would go look at like the state house of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, and you'd be like, oh, that wasn't done by us, especially
Mm-hmm.
when the population was 10,000 people. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
we didn't build that. So
Mm.
I to me, this is such a glorious thing, because this is like, okay, we have the great white judgment coming up. We got, Donald Trump, peacekeeper Donald Trump, starting war in the Holy Land. He's going for it. He wants to buy, Greenland. We got all
Yeah.
this other stuff with Alaska and Russia, everything. And like, this whole thing pointing to the Arctica and Antarctica and all this other stuff. I'm just like, oh man, I bet you this whole thing is really gearing up for like the big reveal. And
Mm,
all the while the big reveal is coming, it's the same time that this nefarious technology is coming out to hijack and entrain our minds away from the analog brilliance that's about to happen, the in real life brilliance of what's right here is going to be diverted from the attention that's being given to these false realities through the digital realm. Does that
mm.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's really fascinating to get to talk on some of these topics outside of the realms of just pure apologetics and theology, which is my wheelhouse, and getting angles of consciousness and architecture. And I love that. It is definitely. I'm trying to formulate compartments in my mind for some of this, even as we're talking, because it's fresh. From a theological point of view, I'm not. As of now, I am not sold at all on the little reason thing. But again, it's because I have theological aspects of that. I have some verses in my mind and things that would absolutely have to be torn down into the Greek and the Hebrew, and I'd have to see that for myself at this point. But with that to say, the part that I do agree with is we are in a bit of a thought prism with
Yeah.
evangelical Christianity. And even like what you were talking about earlier when we were talking about eternal damnation and things like that, one thing that's on my ever long list that I don't know if I'll have enough time in my lifetime to ever get through and do a study on is the most poignant proof text for burning in hell forever and ever is where it says that the smoke of their torment, there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and the smoke of their torment will rise forevermore. And what it's saying in that verse is Satan and his angels and all those who take the mark of the beast and worship its image. And so we have here 3, possibly 4 groups of people, if you want to separate those who worship the beast and his image as 1 or 2 categories. What you have here are what's left on earth between mortal and immortal. So Satan was created an immortal creature. His angels were created immortal. And those who worship the beast and the image of the beast, I believe, are the transhuman people who bought into a premature eternal life. And the reason why they're all thrown into the lake of fire and don't cease, they don't die, is because they all have a form of immortality. So what about all the people who didn't take the mark of the beast and didn't worship his image, and you aren't Satan and you aren't an angel? And why is there so much language in the Bible about people who will experience the second death? Now, is this one of these oxymorons where death means the opposite? Death actually means never, ever, ever, ever dying. But again, that's
I think
English.
that gets to your point of talking about the NDE, though, because you had a very valid question. Because who's to say what Jesus defined death as is what our
Right?
current allopathic, because I know
Yep.
so many people that I actually like know on a deep level, where we from an allopathic perspective experience death, but that
Yes.
maybe that, like, to me that's not death. Like, literally when people talk to me about death, I'm like, there is no death.
Yeah. And I think you could even support that in scripture if we see him in a blinking of an eye. And if to be absent from the body is to be present from the Lord. We even see that biblically, that it's a transition, but it seems to be pretty split second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Topher. You know, there's a story I remember hearing as a kid. A missionary came to our church, and we're coming home on their furlough to raise their support and stuff. And I can't remember where they were. I can't remember what part of the country they were in, but they were working with the tribe, and people were getting buried alive because the way that they determined death or not had nothing to do with checking the pulse. It had something to do with, oh, Topher, I can't remember what it was, but basically their cultural understanding of what signified someone being dead had nothing to do with heartbeat or checking the pulse. And so
Hmm.
these missionaries were witnessing all of these children, especially, being buried alive. And the missionaries were begging the people, like, please let us teach you, like, how to, like, so I finally, after argumentation, they managed to convince the head of the tribe or whatever that when this child died, to just leave it unburied for 2 days or 3 days or whatever it was. I don't know. And the kid came to. And so
Hmm.
then they had this aha moment, and then they were able to teach the tribe about checking pulse and heart rate and bringing in stethoscopes and all that. So we look at that in our ethnocentric point of view and go, oh, how primitive, these primitive people. But every single culture on planet Earth has been primitive. We're primitive. 1,000 years from now, if the Lord so tarries, we'll be the primitive ones. And so who's to say that a man-made machine that beeps and flatlines is Jesus's ultimate definition of when that
Right.
window closes? Why is it
Uh,
any better than the people that didn't take the pulse?
yeah, maybe Jesus was like when he brought the man back to life. Maybe he was that dude that was just like, oh, wait a minute, all we need is a little patience.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus said, oh no, she's not dead, she's only sleeping, and they mocked him.
Yeah, that just makes me think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Bring out your dead.
I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet. Oh, you're not fooling anybody. He'll be dead in a moment. Do us a favor.
Oh man, Tover, I could talk to you all day, and some may say that I already have. We have come up to 2 hours now. You have been so generous with your time and your research and your knowledge, and I just thank you so much for coming on here. I'm going to just scroll really quickly and see if anybody put any questions or comments in all caps. I always try to get to the chat here at the end. I'm just going to scroll through really quickly. I just want to say again, everybody, if you're interested in the topic of near-death experience from a more biblical perspective, check out Shaun Tabatt's The NDE Conspiracy. And as I'm scrolling through the chat and just seeing so many familiar faces and new faces and comments and discussions, thanks to everyone who joined. I'm not readily seeing any all caps or questions or comments. So if you think of something after the show or you're watching this in the archives, be sure to put it down in the comments and we'll get back to you at that point. But Topher, before we check out of here, how can people find you?
You can go. I'm on all the social media. My show is the Biocharisma Podcast. So on Telegram, on Instagram, on all the grams, on YouTube, on Rumble. I'm at Biocharisma. So you can find my media there. If you guys are getting ready for your spring season of gardening, I sell a carbon soil amendment at Black Gold Biochar. As you can see, the Biocharisma podcast has the word biochar in it. So that's been my moniker since 2012. Um, we did some field testing. Nobody could see the biochar and biocharisma. That's why I trademarked Black Gold Biochar. But I've been selling biochar and soil like that for the last 4 months. So that's a new venture that I'm super stoked about. So you could go to blackgoldbiochar.com if you want to check that out. And if you want to see some of my construction or any of my other offerings, you could go to topherhq.com. And that's where I have a lot of my construction photos from my time in Costa Rica. That's where it's the easiest way to contact me if you're an email type of person. And on Telegram, it's a lot of fun because on Telegram we have two chats where we have over 4,000 people talking.
Woo!
Yeah, which is
Wow.
really exciting. So usually the Telegram chat is the best way to get in there if you guys feel like interacting with like-minded people.
Awesome. Wonderful. I will try to get a bunch of those links into the liner notes here within the next few minutes as well. So if you weren't taking notes, we can look into the liner notes and get you can get in contact with Topher. So Topher, once again, thank you so much for your time. It has been awesome chatting with you.
Oh, my pleasure, Vicki.
All right, everybody, that's been Taco Tuesday for this week. We will see you next week. Thanks for joining, liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. We appreciate you. We love this community, and thanks for joining.